Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our morning mini this morning. So today's morning mini, it's the first Monday of the month, so I will always do the first Monday morning mini on our main page. Hopefully, if you're in the inner circle, you have gotten that memo and you are here. The rest of the Mondays of the month, I do these minis on in the inner circle Facebook page. So that's for if you're interested in joining the membership and you love these minis, that is something that you can have every single Monday. So today I'm a little torn as to what I'm going to paint because there are so many fun things to paint in December, and I like to paint with the seasons, especially for the morning minis, because we can paint what we're in the mood to paint. So I'm taking suggestions if anyone wants to pop up anything in the comments. Otherwise, I was thinking about doing something. I wanted to do something with the red in it because I just feel like painting red today. And one of my members suggested doing a little sled, sort of propped up by a door or a doorway. So good morning, Karen. So I think I'm going to look for some references on some front doors. I recently sold one of my minis of a front door painting that I did last year, so I kind of would like to replace that. So that'd be a great thing to paint today. So I'm going to take you through the entire process of creating a new painting, from looking up the references, hashing out ideas, doing a little sketch, like a preliminary sketch for the painting, and then painting the painting from start to finish. So it's just going to be everything is kind of abbreviated. Of course, you could always take much more time on each of these stages, but the research and development, the practice sketches, and the paintings, those three phases are equally as important for the final outcome. And so I'm going to take you through each of those three steps, and we'll come out at the end of today with a little tiny finished mini. So I'm using a 4x4 canvas today. I'll just talk about my supplies, which is currently stuck. So it's a little 4x4. You can use any size canvas that you want. If you want to use a 4x4, 5x5, 6, or 8x8, totally depends on what you're in the mood for. I like to do the 4x4s. It does kind of help keep it a little simple, but you can also do this painting larger if it helps you to paint a little bit larger. Good morning, Barbara. Hi, Bonnie. So I love saying hello to everybody when I'm painting live, so thank you so much for joining me, and if you have any questions, I'm going to pull up my iPad and have the conversation on my iPad as well, so that I can also respond to comments or questions if I can see them on my iPad. All right, so I'm going to put my camera on the tripod and show you my desktop so we can start looking at fun references, one of my favorite parts of hunting and gathering of images. All right, so let's bring my phone down a little closer to. Okay, so now we're going to shop for some ideas, and I'm going to stick with the idea of doing a front door, the sled. Thank you, Linda, for your suggestion. And let me bring up our Facebook page so that I can also respond to any comments and let anyone know that I'm also on the main page today. Okay, so let's go to the Inner Circle Facebook group, and I'm just going to make a quick post, let them know that we're here. Inner Circle, okay, let's see. Live on the main Art Rave page this morning. There we go. Okay, so that's for the Inner Circle members. This is our private group for the members. Now I'm going to go to so this is one that I painted last year. Let me see if I have it in a folder. So I store my images in shared albums that I just share with myself. Here's Morning Minis. And this is one of the paintings I did last year, which I thought was super fun, and I love the way this little sled is sort of here by the front door. So we could do like a little crop close-up of the sled and a little piece of a front door. That would be really pretty. I'm going to look up, I'm just going to go to Google, and I'm going to put winter sled decor, because I want to see how people are using sleds as decor. Okay, so then we'll do an image search and see if there's something aside from the beautiful sled itself. The composition is what I'm looking for. So this is kind of nice because it just shows a little bit of brick, shows a little bit of the door, and it shows the sled right there. So I like this composition. So I'm going to actually screenshot this image and save it to my photos. Where did you go? Let's see, this was just a little Home Depot ad for the sled, but where's their main image? Okay. All right, they don't have it, so we're just going to go back to here. We're just going to screenshot this. So I screenshot things to save them. So I'm going to screenshot this, and I just want to save this little piece. So I'm just going to go right up to here and save that to photos. Okay, because I like the background to that sled. That might not be the sled, but I like that it shows a little of the door. Let's see, what other... See, because if it's just propped in the corner, you might not see some of the door. And we want to keep this really simple, so we're just going to put in just the basics. Let's see here. This is nice too, because it shows the door and it shows it leaning. Well, in a second, I got to just respond to an order. Yes. Okay, so this is a nice one too. So I'm going to screenshot for this one, just the way it's near, like I said, the proximity to the door. I want to do an extreme close-up of a sled. If I do. Who's liking the sled idea? And I actually put a sled out on my front porch this morning with some ice skates on it, like this. Here, I'm going to share it with you. I'll show you what I have. That's pretty. So this is a really pretty photo. I do like the brick. I think it'd be fun to do some bricks in there. So here's my sled that's on my front porch this morning. Ta-da! So that's cute, and I just bought those little ice skates. They're like a child's ice skate. They're like so tiny, but they're perfect for that. Hanging on my sled. So this would be a nice sled too, with the little black ice skates, because I also have a black door. So I might as well just use this one too. I'm going to save this one. Save. So I'm storing them in my photos so they're right in my images, and then I can refer to them when I want to do my sketch. So let's go back to our image search. What I'm looking for more, because I already kind of have a good idea of the sled from my own sled, is what now I'm looking for is just a really good picture of a front door, so that I can just create a nice composition. Let's see this one. Oh, that's Home Depot again. Yep, I think it's just that black door I'm attracted to. Let's see. We could always put it blocking the door a little bit, kind of like this, just for the sake of composition. Deciding on the composition is probably one of the more challenging parts of a painting, because the composition is really, it's kind of everything. So here's one up against a wood pile. It's kind of different. Too complicated, but, or up against a tree. Up against a snowy tree might look really nice, actually. What do you guys think about putting it up against a tree? I kind of like that idea. And with snow on it. I love putting snow on things. Okay, so I'm gonna screenshot this one because I really like that it's just up against a tree. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually look for I'm going to Google this, winter sled. I'm going to put by a tree. And we'll see what comes up. Oh, excuse me. Okay, let's see. So we have, this is kind of nice. It's a nice photo with the little lake in the background, but I don't want to get too complicated. Sticking to a 4x4. Well, I think just keeping it simple and having it up against this like a little tree. I do like a little bit of snowy trees in the background, like on here. Oh, great, Marge. So, Marge, should we do front porch or should we do it up against a tree? Something like this, up against a tree, or a door with brick? Any suggestions from the viewers? Let's see. I like both the door and the snowy tree. Okay, Barb said she likes both. That's great. Thanks, Barb. And let's see if anybody else has any comments here. Oops, hold on. I got to tell somebody else. On the main page today, first Monday of the month. Okay, someone else was lost. All right, so let's see. Yep, tree or red door. I like that idea. Tree, either one. Okay, I got a little balance of both, but I think that for simplicity's sake, I'm torn. I'm gonna see if I can decide when I do the sketch. I'm thinking of the tree just because it's more organic. I think it's easier for people to paint. So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards is the tree. All right, so let's start with a sketch. I'm sketching on tissue paper today, tracing paper rather, because I had to get a new sketch pad, and I like sketching on tracing paper actually. All right, so good morning, Gio. First time here. Well, welcome. Welcome to our little painting morning mini. So we are sketching out some ideas for a painting of a sled. And now that we've gotten some references, let me go to the photos that we screenshotted a bunch of photos just a few minutes ago just to kind of give us some ideas. So let me go to my photos. And here's some of my screenshots. This is my sled in front of my house. And this is some photo references of a front door. That's nice. And up against a tree. So we'll do a door and a tree and then we'll decide. So here's our little square. I'm going to do little sketches. Now, when you're doing a sketch for a painting and you're starting from scratch, you might do 5 to 10 different doodles just for composition. These are called thumbnails, even though they're not that tiny. But you can do smaller ones. You can do small ones just to kind of see, like, do I want the sled this way? And the door here. And this brick. Okay, see how it's so small? Or I could do a tree and the sled here with the tree line in the back. So do you see how it's just little tiny sketches that are called thumbnails? And they can just sort of help you to just flush out those visuals, those ideas. So if I'm going to do a door, I would probably, I kind of like it, I don't know why, on this side. I would have a little bit of the porch so I could see the bottom of the sled. Or if I'm just going to do the top of the sled, I can have the door just go straight down. And then the sled could be leaning. I'm going to put the sled at a slight angle. The sled could be leaning here, and we could just put just a white line for our door frame. And then everything can be all about Here's the bow. Maybe we'll just put like a single skate. And all the little greenery. Now, this is meant to be quick so that we can just get the composition down. It's not meant to be beautiful. It's just, that's why I'm drawing things really bold. So I just want to get the idea and the composition. Like, how big do I want this to be on the square? Do I want it to be straight on, or do I want it to be at a slant? So if I did the tree, if I did the house, I would have, I kind of like the brick a little bit. It might seem busy, but we would simplify it. And I would like a black door, but then that does leave a big section of black on our painting right here. I think that I like the idea of the tree because, one, I want to do a close-up of the sled. Or we can back up. Let's see. Let's try it backed up a little bit. If we back it up, I'm going to do one more of the door. See, we would have to do all of this, the front porch, because we need to have the sled propped on something. Okay, so see, we could put the door here, but then we got to paint all these straight lines. And I don't mind painting straight lines, but I think it might be more tedious for people who are just starting out. But to see how I gave the sled something to sit on here. So I could have snow here, and then I've had to paint and figure out, which on a more complicated painting, it's not that complicated to do. And we could put a little tree here, a little porch tree, with a planter in the snow. And that could be really cute. But I'd almost rather, let me try it now with a tree. Because I like painting the natural background versus painting all these straight lines. It's a little bit more carefree to paint the backgrounds, just pretty. So I think I like the whole sled to be visible. I'm going to put it a little at a slant. And leaning, and I'm going to have a little off-center, so I'm going to have my tree right here. Now the bottom of the tree has to be further back than the bottom of the sled so that the sled looks closer to us. So we're not going to have a straight line. We might have some snow up against this tree, but you get the idea. We can have a double tree like that, or it could be a single. I think a little bit of the double might look a little better. And then we want the tree, we want it to be not that far from here, so I'm going to try and keep my sled away from the top. We have our little bar here, and we can have it any shape we want. The panels. And then I like the idea of having just some distant evergreens back here. And then our little whatever decoration here, our bow. We could put a skate here. And our little holly or greenery. And then I'm going to put snow on this, because I like the way it's kind of in the snow. All right, so let's do the tree. I think this is more simple for beginners and also just for the fun of it. We want to keep it fun. Okay, so that's our little mini sketch, and I am going to do an underpainting on this canvas. And the reason I do an underpainting is so that it gives me some tone to the canvas. And I think since we're using this warm wood, that I might just do it in brown. So let's go over the colors we're going to need today and the brushes. So I'm going to use a little palette. And the colors I'm going to use today are cobalt blue, We just need a tiny dot, actually. It's probably too much. Some green oxide. Now these are all Blick brand paints, so I'm using the names that Blick uses, which can also be in other brands. Black. Burnt umber. And white. Oh good, I see some people saying they like the tree. Awesome. We're all on the same page. And then we're going to need a little red for our decorations and our, oh Jesus, that's very fast. Okay, so for the brushes, I'm just going to use a small flat brush. Whatever size you have is fine. This is like about 1/4 of an inch, number 10. And let's see if I have water in my cup. Yep. Okay, so let's get a little bit of the brown. And I'm just going to use a tiny bit of water and brown. And I'm just going to paint the canvas brown. So when we were choosing between the house and the tree, one thing to think about when you're beginning painting and you're going to sit down and design your own little painting is you want to keep it simple for yourself in the beginning. Of course, as you get better and as you get more experience, you're going to want to, increase your challenge, but don't try to make it too challenging for yourself right away, because you might just set yourself up for failure. Emotional failure. You don't want to feel like you can't do it and that you can't paint. You can paint, you just got to find an easy enough subject and keep it simple. And then as your skills increase, then you can take on more ambitious subject matter. But feeling like you can't paint is a big reason why people stop, and we don't want you to do that. We want you to keep on painting. All right, so I'm going to hit this with the blow dryer really quickly. And if I can reach my blow dryer, I think it fell. Yep. Okay. Okay, so that's dry in a minute. And one thing I'm glad Laura mentioned she likes watching the thumbnails, is that I do them very fast for this video so that you kind of get the idea. But I would suggest when you're doing your own thumbnails that you take a good amount of time, maybe half an hour to an hour. If you're new to drawing, you might need some extra practice on drawing whatever subject you pick. And it might take some time to get that subject accurate. Now I have a background in illustration, so I draw very fast because I am a professional illustrator. But if you have a subject matter that might take some drawing time and some practice, even some tracing, then take your time and make it the best that you can by tracing it, transferring it, practice drawing it, all that good stuff, because you definitely will feel better about your painting if you have a drawing that you're happy with. All right, so I'm going to actually, to keep my painting original, I'm going to use my own sled that I have in front of my house. This way I'm not copying off somebody else's professional photograph. And let's see, I want it to be kind of close up. Let's see. But I don't need to see the bottom, I don't think, because I want more detail on the top. So I'm going to, I'm going to put my sled kind of close up. I like doing close-ups because then you can make things bigger. So here's my main rectangle at a slight angle. I'm not going to do a lot of details. I just want to get the composition in. So I'm going to paint over this with my background. And the tree is going to be in here. actually the tree, yeah, it can be, you can do the double tree. And the background, okay. So this is my simple composition. I'm going to divide the background and the bottom snow by about 2/3, 1/3. So there's my snow. I'm going to put my tree over to the side too. This is also kind of a 1/3, 2/3 with my tree. And I'm going to do two little trunks. And then my sled is going to be at a slight angle and a little over to the right, which is going to also give it a little more asymmetrical composition, just a little off to the side. And it gives a little breathing room here, so it's not dead center. And I don't want it too far over to the edge this way. Since it's leaning, it would look better if it's over here. So I might even just move it over just a smidgen when I paint it. All right, so now that doesn't look like much, but you know what? This is for you when you're drawing it. You have to do the little messy sketch for yourself just so that you can see your placement. But we already did the pencil sketch, so we already had enough practice. Whenever you practice your pencil sketch, you don't have to get as much detail on your canvas because you've already taken the time to draw and sort of memorize it in your sketch. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the background of the dark evergreens. And I like the evergreens. I'm going to, let me organize this a little bit so I have space for everything. I want you to see the painting, but I also want you to see the reference. There we go. And I like the, see this little distant tree back here? It's just dark. So we're just going to not overthink it. We're just going to paint black and a little bit of blue and green. And I'm going to paint that back here. So I'm going to paint in the background here. And I want there to be a kind of two trees in here, so I'm just going to paint like this. So there's my two trees. And because there's blue and green in here, it's not a solid black, so it's not flat. Even just a simple messy layer has more texture in it because I have the brown underpainting and then a couple of different colors mixed. So it seems super simple, and it is, but I already have 4 colors right here. I have brown, black, blue, and green just in this little plain square. So you can see how that's already going to be an interesting area. And I'm going to let this dry while I paint the snow. So for the snow, I'm not going to paint it solid white. I'm going to paint it a little tiny bit of blue and white, just a little, because we want the snow to have some color. And then we'll add the white as the highlight. So I'm adding a little bit of blue, maybe a little bit of black. And we're not going to see the bottom of the tree, so I'm just going to paint the snow on either side here. And the snow between here can be a little soft and fuzzy. Let's just make it a little soft. I'm going to use the brush really lightly and just very, very lightly just sort of soften that edge so it just is a little softer in the background. Just go over it and kind of mess it up a little bit. We don't need a sharp edge back there. Anything in the distance can always be softer, messier. That's how we kind of blur out that background. Now for the tree, I'm wondering if it would look nice if it's a birch tree. I want it to stand out against the background and have a little more contrast. So I think I'm going to do, actually I have a really pretty river birch in my backyard, and I'm looking at it through my window. So I'm going to paint a tan, a light tan, and that peely bark. maybe this is over ambitious, but I don't know. It's what I see in my yard and I love it. So just using a little burnt umber and white and painting my tree trunks. Notice I'm going over the background and making my tree trunk nice and straight. Now I'm keeping in mind that this is a background. This is not my focal point. If I were just having this tree and snow and maybe a little bird, then this would get a lot more attention. But I'm thinking about the whole painting. And for the whole painting, I want all of my focus to go on to this beautiful bouquet I'm going to create here. So this area here, I want to just keep pretty minimal. Now for the background snow, this is starting to dry. I'm going to just put a little suggestion of greenery. So I'm taking a little bit of green, maybe a little blue, and I'm just going to dab it into the background. I'm using my brush, I'm holding my brush horizontal, so it kind of looks like the branches that go horizontal, like how the pine trees have those staggering layers of branches. So I'm just using blue and a little bit of, green and a little bit of blue. Just creating some messy little blobs of branches. Now down at the bottom here, I'm going to get a little bit more black. Just a few little strokes. I don't want anything to be solid black. You just want little dabs, just to kind of bring some interest to the background. So I put a couple little dabs of black near the bottom because that's where the shadows are going to be the deepest, underneath a shrub. Okay, so here's what we have so far. If you can see the little texture and the little blobs of green. And then the other thing we do on acrylic paint too is a lot of times things require multiple layers. And I like to do those layers. Sometimes you layer when it's wet. Sometimes you wait till it's dry. Notice I'm waiting till the snow is dry before I add a second coat. So now that I have this dirty blue, now when I paint the white's going to show up nicely, and I can just paint it sort of rough and scratchy because I want texture in here. I don't necessarily want it to look like a paper cutout. So I want some paint. I want some variation. So I'm going to put some white in there. Maybe I'll come back in with a little bit more blue in the corner, just to kind of give it a little bit more interest. Okay, so the white got a little second coat of paint, little dabs of white, showing some texture to the snow here. Okay, and then this isn't dry yet, but I'm going to add a little tiny bit of I'm not going to go straight white. I'm going to go a little bit of a blue-gray white. So the distant snow here is going to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to put some little bits of snow back here. I'm not using it as bright as the foreground because I don't want it to take attention away from the foreground. So I'm muddying it down just a little tiny bit, making it a little bit of a blue-gray, which will make it look like it's snow, but it's snow in the shadows. So it's not going to be as bright white as this other snow. So just a little suggestion of snow back here. So all we need is it's actually light blue-gray. It's not white. Okay, just a little, gotta stop. Okay, so there's our little snowy background. That's pretty easy. It's going to help create depth because whenever you have subject matter that's further away, it's going to be more muted, less contrast, less focus, less detail, all that good stuff. Okay, so now we're going to switch to the pointy brush, and this is a number 6 round, and I'm going to just add some loose detail to this river birch and give it a little more texture. Again, I'm going to try and keep it very simple because this is not my focal point. My focal point is my sled, so I want to keep this to a minimum. Now, to keep it to a minimum, but to still give it depth, what we're going to do is, so this is our base coat, we're going to paint highlights and shadows. So whenever I look at a subject and you think, where do I start with this? Whether it's a leaf, a face, a tree, you think what's the general color, so what's the base coat, and then how do I highlight and shadow the base coat. So this base coat is kind of a lighter brown. For the shadows, I'm going to use a darker brown. So I'm just going to take the burnt umber and a tiny bit of black, just a little bit of black. And I'm going to make some little messy bark along these edges. And I'm looking at my tree outside and just getting some overall ideas. So just a tiny bit of black, and I'm going to just come down. I'm going to keep it a little on the scratchy side so it has that texture. It's probably a little darker than this, but it's okay. So I don't want to get it too textured. I don't want, like, again, I don't want to take away from my sled. So I'm going to just cover a lot of it with messy brown. And I'll do this other side too. So I'm just going to fill in a lot of the tree. I'm just using the strokes in the direction of the bark. So if they're long or they're short, I'm doing long and short strokes. Now the other thing with a birch tree is I like to go from dark to light. So I'll go a little darker first, and then I'll add the light highlights. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to punch up some of the shadows with a little bit of black and water. You see how I thinned it a little bit? This is going to make for a little bit more delicate shadow, not something so harsh. So with a little bit of water and black, I'm going to come in and add a little bit of a light gray or black shadows. So it's looking pretty dark here. I'm going to take a little bit of water, and just with that tiny bit of water, I'm just going to wash over this a little bit. I want to blur it a tiny bit more. I don't want it to be too crisp and detailed. So keeping it soft, it's almost like with a camera. When you think about your phone or your camera, if it has a portrait mode, it blurs the things that are in the background. So we want to keep this a little blurry. I'm getting carried away because I love my birch tree, but I still want to try and keep it pretty low-key, pretty soft, because my sled is what I want to be the focal point. So now I'm just going to add a few little highlights, and I'm not going to do the whole center area because my sled's going here. I'll just put a few near the top, and then I can always come back after my sled's painted and add some additional highlights to whatever part of the tree is still showing. There's no point in putting all this detail here if I'm going to put the sled right here. So I'm just going to put a few little details up here. Just a little bit of white, no big deal. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it like that because I have my sled that's going to go here. Okay, so let's dry this, and I'm going to dry it. Right now we've got the three main areas of the background, nice and simple. I think this was much more simple than painting a house. Not that I don't love the house. I would like to do a larger painting of that. But on this little mini, it's kind of hard to squeeze some of those house details in. Okay, so there's our background. Simple, soft, and let's draw our sled. So I'm going to go back to my sled, and this is the sled I'm going to put here. So it's going to be red across the top with a little angle. It's going to be angled like this. Maybe I'll do a smidgen lower and not quite so angled. I'm going to do a little more upright. And then we've got the big bar that goes across. We've got one center rail. I'm going to paint those in because no sense, the chalk's going to be just messy. And I think that that's good. The red bottom rail is going to be kind of right there. So it's a nice close-up, and I like it. All right, so I'm going to paint the the sled. I'm going to paint the red areas red, and then the tan areas I'm going to paint with a lot of white, and I'll warm them up a little later with another brown that I don't have on my palette right now. I'm going to need a little bit of a raw sienna, which is not on my carousel here. Okay, so I want to get a warmer brown for the wood here. I'm going to grab another color in a minute. So let me get I'll do the wood first. I'm going to do just a little bit of white and a little bit of tan. Now this is called blackout white. So the blackout white is going to cover up anything dark. That's why I want a lot of white at first. So I'm going to just paint in the shape here. With my little arms that are coming out. And then I'm going to paint the center rail. So there's 3 rails and then 2 side rails. So the center board, actually let's do that with a flat brush. I'm going to switch to the flat brush because this is going to give me a perfect board. Look at just like that. Just go straight down. Okay, so there's the center board, and then there's 2 side boards that are a little bit thinner. Maybe I can just do it. It won't push as hard. I'm going to taper my brush. There's one. And there's the other. So it's just very basic, laying in the shapes. I'm whiting out the wood so that I have a base for the wood slats. So turn your brush sideways if you need to make it narrower. Okay. So there's the 3 main panels. Just paint rectangles, keep them nice and straight and parallel if you can. And I'm going to just grab a brown from my cabinet. So I need a little tiny bit of raw sienna. This is what's going to give me that warm wood, that golden wood color. You just need a tiny little dab of that. And I'm going to switch back to the pointy brush to do there's two skinny rails on the side. So I'm just going to use white and a little bit of this color. There we go. And that's going to go right here. 1, 2. Now you can always use a different sled than mine. If you find a sled that's more simple online, or maybe you have your own sled, you can always just simplify your sled and paint your sled or your favorite sled. So now I'm going to add a little bit more of this raw sienna to start adding the golden color to my sled. Again, I'm not going to do this much up here because I know I'm going to cover that up with all my goodies, all the skates and everything. So I'm just going to paint the wood on the bottom. Now if this were a larger painting, I would be using a ruler for this. I wouldn't take the chance on trying to eyeball it, not if you wanted it to look really, really good. So on a larger painting, this would be done with a ruler or a template that I would have already drawn and traced and made sure was straight and accurate. Because even though you're just showing a part of the sled, the part that you're showing, you want it to look strong and straight. This way you have this strong structure of the sled and then all this organic around it, the organic bouquet, the tree, but the contrast of a nice straight rigid sled is what makes a really nice complement to the nature, to the natural elements that are around it. So get those lines nice and straight. Like I said, on these little tiny paintings, you can eyeball it. Okay, so let's do the top little arms. And a simple round brush like the one I'm using is perfect just for a single stroke, just to put that little arm in there. Just get a nice little dollop of paint and just pull it back. All right, so we've got some good foundation for our sled. We still have to add, this is the base coat, so we don't have the highlights or the shadows on the sled yet, but we're not going to waste our time doing that until we have our bouquet, because again, this is going to take up a lot of space. We're only going to add details to the areas that are not covered up by our bouquet. All right, so now let's put in the red details. Now the red framework. So I'm going to use the pointy brush for this also. And the red is transparent, so it might take a few coats. So I'm just going to get my top section here, which isn't quite as angled as I drew it with the chalk. So I'm changing it a little bit as I paint it. I don't need to paint right where my chalk was. The chalk was just a guide for placement, so I'm going to be more accurate each stage. If you see something that you can make an adjustment or correction for, then do it in the painting stage. And I'm going to have my red lines coming down from here. And this, of course, the actual sled part. So I have a little wooden frame around here, like on the back. You see how there's that wooden, and it's, when I paint over it, it can make my line go crooked. So if that's happening to you, you got to be a little careful that you don't. Keep your lines really light. If you touch it really lightly, you have more control than if you push hard. So go really lightly. You might want to use a liner. If you have a liner, that's a good part to use a liner. Otherwise, just make sure you go nice and lightly. Okay, I'm going to do this other section here. This is where I start holding my painting so I can show you up close. Okay, so we're going to see a little of the red behind here. So I'm going to just paint in a few little red streaks. It's got these little side supports. I'm going to get some of those in there, and it just adds nice little red detail to it. Doesn't have to be perfectly accurate. There we go. And there is a little pinstripe down the center on mine, which I think is an important detail, so I'm going to put that in there. Now, do you see how transparent this is, where you can see the dark tree and then the white? So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to take a little bit of white, and I'm going to paint white on top of my red. I know it seems strange, but when it dries, it's going to help me to, it's going to give it an opaque layer, and then I can add red over the top, and it'll make that red nice and bright. So I'm going to add a little white on top of my red. This is what's going to make this opaque. So just a little tiny strip of white. And then when that dries, I'm going to come over and coat it with another coat of red, and it's going to be nice and bright. Okay, now for the skate, I'm only going to do one skate, and I'm thinking that what I like on it is we can do a different bow. We don't have to do the poinsettia. I actually had a burlap bow that I have to locate in another bin, but I just threw the poinsettia on there. So I think I might do, what do I want for the bow? I think we could do a red bow, because I think a little more red to this painting would look really nice with the black skate. So let's do our little skate. I'm going to draw it with pencil first, and I'm going to make my skate a little lower so that I can have room for my bow. So I'm going to make my skate here. So there's my little skate. And we're just going to paint him in black. Now you could also paint a white skate on here if you wanted to. I'm going to go black because that's what I have on my. And I'm going to take a tiny bit of gray and just mix a little bit of gray in here so that the skates aren't straight black. These are old skates, so they're not going to be super shiny black. They're going to be a little bit dull. So So I like that little bit of gray in there. And the gray also creates a little highlight. So we're going to add a little highlight to the gray so it looks like it's a little bit leathery. So by painting some white on here while the black is still wet, it will blend and not be straight white. So there's just a couple little lighter gray streaks on that skate. And we'll put the little heel. Now, any of these paintings that we do as minis, I mentioned this earlier, but you can take any of these paintings and make them larger. If you're looking for something fun to paint, you want to do something with a family member or a niece or nephew or child, you can take out one of these minis, paint them a little bit bigger so that they're a little easier for, smaller hands or shorter attention spans, and just paint something fun and simple. Now, it's the details that's going to really make this painting look amazing. So right now we're getting in all the basics, all the subject, the base coats, and the placement. But when we do the little fine details, we're going to use a lot of black and, well, not a lot, but we're going to take black and white and we're going to make little black and white details. And you're going to see how those details is what's going to make this painting look very finished, are the black and white details at the very end. Okay, so just hang in there with me on these stages. We're just painting all the main areas. So the skate is pretty, I would say that's filled in, but like I said, we're going to add all the little fun details later. Now for the bow, we're going to do a red Christmas bow. So I'm going to take red. I'm going to use the pointy brush just because it's a good size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a center. So just paint a little roundish square center. And then just paint a few little blobs around it. These can be loose. Mine are not being loose. It looks like a perfect pinwheel, but oh well. And I'm going to paint a little tail. And I'm going to paint just some big blobs of red around here. And I just want a small tail. I don't want them to be too taking over the painting here. So there's my little red. And we're going to keep the green really simple too. We're just going to use, so this is just the base coat. So go ahead and put your red base coat in there. And actually before we finish the red, let's take a little bit of white. And I'm going to put white little blobs in the middle of each of my little loops. So just put a little white blob in the middle of your loops. That's what's going to highlight the bow. Just like on our metal frame, we need the white to cover up the background. So just take a little bit of white. It doesn't matter, it's going to turn to pink. It doesn't matter. Just get that white in there, and so then you're going to have, see all those little pink blobs? That's what you want. You want to have some white areas that's going to, because later on that's going to be your highlight. Okay, so now some greenery. Greenery is what's going to make this look amazing. All right, so we're going to get a little bit of dark green first. So let's get some black and green and a little bit of blue. For greenery, we go dark to light. So we're going to start off a little darker and then we'll lighten it. And I basically just want to come out from here and fill in, watch out for your reds. I want this to be pretty dark because it's the foundation for the greenery. Then we'll brighten it up in a minute. So just paint your main area. Don't get any details yet. Just get in the dark base. Okay, so I got some of the dark base in. Now I'm going to switch to a liner because when we paint this little small areas, we're not going to paint every single little branch needle, but we do want to get some little feathering. So now you can take some dark green with the liner, get a little bit of water so that you can thin it down. And I don't mean to be blocking my painting, but I want to show you the color mixing. And now I'm going to show you, we're going to just go down and we're just going to make little tiny messy greenery. So pay attention to where you're painting a piece of greenery over something light. See, if you go over something dark, you're not going to see it at this stage because it's dark against dark, which we'll fix in a minute when we highlight it. But right now we're just putting in the darks, so you can get right up against your bow, and then you can see, like the dark against the dark, you're not really going to see it too much. We're going to wait until we get the highlighted greens. Right now we're just filling in the darks. So get the dark bases in there. And if it's going against something light, that's when you want to get a little detail. So I'm going to just add some little detail where I might see it against part of the sled. Okay, so do you see how I made it nice and dark? The darkness is what's going to really be the background to our next layer. Now this is the side I want to have. I don't want it to be short and stumpy. I want to have one side be kind of long. So I'm going to have this side have the long greenery. I want to just get a little more greenery in here. A little more fun. So I just added a couple more down there, and maybe I'll have a few coming out over here. Now I put a little straight green on this one. Because it's against the white, it can be nice and bright. Okay, so that's a really generous little pile of green. And I'm going to do a little touch up to my arm here because I got some red on it. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to paint some lighter green, and this is what's going to make this little greenery have dimension. We really, on something so small, we really only need probably 2 layers. So I have my darkest green here. Now I'm going to mix some lighter green by just taking straight green with a little bit of white. So there's no blue or black in here, just straight green and white. And I want to get it light enough so that it pops against the dark. So now, here's this dark area. Now I'm going to start adding the little highlight texture. This highlight layer is what's going to make it look three-dimensional, especially when you see how it's dark here and you can't see it against the distant trees? this light is what's going to bring it out. You see how it just matched right up? Now yours might not match up exactly. That was actually kind of coincidental. But the point is you want to have light green against a dark background, darker green against a lighter background. And these are so messy and just loose because all you need is a little bit of green to suggest that there's those pine needles. We know they're greenery. We know the pine needles are there. Just need a couple little top strokes to show it off. And give it depth. Okay, so that's good for the greenery. Just that little bit of extra light. Because what's really going to pop is if we make some, like, we can put some white berries. Okay. All right, now we're going to add some of the, now that we've got everything based in, now we're going to do the final touches, the blacks and the whites. So everything's based in. I'm going to do a quick blow dry, and I want to remove the chalk, because then I can actually see what I'm painting. So I'm going to blow dry this so that I don't smear anything, and then we're going to add all the little black and white details, and we're going to see this come to life. This is the black and white details are what's going to finish it up. I'm going to move my palette so I don't dry my paints. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've broken down everything into shapes. We broke down the background into our shapes, and we broke down the sled into some basic shapes. Our rectangles for the wood, the shape of our skate, the shape of our bow, which is just a big hot bun, and then we did the little metal frames for the red. So everything was broken down into shapes, and we added the base coat, and then sometimes we added some highlights. Now we're going to get into some details where layering in the red that I mentioned, because this white of course is not going to stay. So let's get all the chalk off first, and then we're going to do our final touches. So I'm going to use a wet brush and just take the water, just a little bit of water on a wet brush. We'll get all that chalk off so I can see what's what. Okay. All right, so there's our painting so far, and I'm going to add the red layer, a thin red layer. This is what's going to go over the white, and then it's going to be a bright red. See, I'm just painting right over the white, and look at how wherever there was white, the red is nice and bright. So now you don't see the trees and the distant trees through the red paint. The white makes the paint, makes the opaque layer, covers up the background, and then it makes for a nice foundation for our bright red to be even brighter. So I'm just going over the areas of white with a thin layer of red. Okay, so that makes our metal frame super bright. I love it. Let me just clean up this little corner. It's a little ratty. Okay, so now that we finished all the main areas, I'm going to do the black and whites, and this is where you can ask yourself, like, where do I need little bits of black? Where do I need little bits of white? And they can just be little tiny bits. You can use a liner, or you can use a pointy, even smaller, pointier brush. Now on the minis, because I've started doing the minis, I have gotten a few more tiny brushes. And it's nice to have a few selected small brushes just for little details, and especially if you do minis. So let's see, where can we add blacks and where can we add whites? For the whites, I'm going to add a little bit of white to my ice skate. For sure, we need some shine on that, baby. I'm going to add a little bit of white to some of my boot, like maybe to suggest a sole. So a little tiny bit of white for the sole. And maybe some little, just little dots or shines for like the little laces. And maybe a little bit of shine for like the leather. Okay, so there's just a couple little white details. I'm going to get my boots a little, my blades a little shinier. Okay, now on the ribbon, we don't have to do any detail on the ribbon necessarily, but I think I might just want to add a little white rim to the ribbon because then it'll stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to get my brush nice and pointy, and I'm going to add a little white border to the sides of my ribbon. Like, imagine if the ribbon has like a metal, you know, the wire edges, and those wire edges are white. It's just adding a little extra something to my bow here. Oop. And we can add a little bit of more white to our tree. Now we haven't even added snow, but let's just put some snow in here. See how I'm just adding detail now? There's only a little bit of the tree showing, so I can just add a little bit of detail to the tree. Maybe a little of the tree down here. And let's add some snow to our sled. So that got kind of lumpy. Let's see if I can fix that a little. Now if there's snow there, there can be snow on your greenery. I'm not going to put it all down the greenery, just on the top where it might have collected. So you can put a little snow there. You can put some snow on the top of this part of the sled. A little thin border. See, the snow is also one of those very forgiving things that it makes for a wonderful cover-up, should we say, to less than perfect lines. You don't need to have, and I think it just makes a beautiful wintry effect. So it seems a little scary to like, oh, I'm messing it up. I have all this snow on there now. But no, I think the snow adds to it so much. I'm even going to put some snow on my bow. Just on the top of the bow. Little piles. Doesn't that look cool? Okay, so now for the highlights, and so that's the highlight. I'm also going to add little black details now. So the black details and the white details are my favorite part of the painting. That's when it all comes together. So for a tiny black detail, I'm going to get some water and black. And I might just add a little black line to the bottom of my skate. Just to kind of define that blade a little bit more. Okay, super tiny. Maybe a little bit just on the edge here. Okay, little tiny details. Another little black detail I might add is just like in the ribbon. See in the little cracks between the ribbon? Just a little bit of black just in the little spaces. To give the ribbon a little bit of depth. Whoops, there we go. And we can also add, I'm going to not do black for this, I'm going to do a darker brown. So I'm going to use the brown from my Sled and a little darker brown. So this is the raw sienna. I'm mixing a little of the burnt umber in it, so it's darker. So it's not black, but this is going to be the edge. The inside edge of my wood pieces here. And I'm making them too thick because I'm pushing too hard, but let's just see if I can make it thinner. So this little tiny edge of dark brown is going to help give the boards a little bit of dimension so they're not so flat. I could also take a little bit of this little bit darker brown. Now this is where, if you're new to painting with me, I paint a lot of glazes. So a glaze is a water. See how I'm watering down this brown black? Because I want it to be really watery and thin. This way I can just apply a tiny little whisper of shadow. So where I want a little whisper of shadow maybe is right underneath the skate. So it looks like the skate is making a shadow on the wood. So it's watered down. Don't get on your blade, just go in between the blade and the skate. Just put a little watery black brown. You can put a little underneath the blade too if you want. See, now the skate has some shadow. You can put some little shadow up here too from the greenery. Don't be afraid of shadows. Shadows add depth. Just got to know where to place them and then how to, and keep, sometimes with a shadow less is more. So I'm going to just do a couple little more darkness in between the boards, just a little line. And I didn't put the little red stripe in there, so let me see if I can do that. So down the center here, stripe. I think that looks nice. And let's see, anything else that needs a little black detail? I could put a little bit of black like back here where the sled sort of matches up there, or underneath the sled here. So these are just, this is the final stages, just little black and white details. You can even do this with a Sharpie if you want to use a very pointy Sharpie, and just add little blacks in the corners of stuff. That's the magic of the black. Now since my skate was gray, I can put some black shadows on my skate too. Since I painted my skate, remember I painted it a little bit gray? Now the black's gonna actually pop. And any other blacks anywhere? I don't think so. I always put a little black on my tree. Little teeny little. All right, I think we're done. I think that's adorable. And I love the snow. Oh, you know what I didn't do is falling snow. So I think what I'm going to do for the falling snow, okay, so, oh, so Gio, I just read that you like painting on 24 by 24. That's big. Well, if you paint this 24 inches by 24 inches, that's going to be a lot more detailed. That would be gorgeous. I think this would make a great large painting maybe next year. Definitely on the list. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my liner and some watered down white, and I'm going to make some little sprinkly snow. So snow falling, water and white, just get it nice and liquid, thin. And then I just tap it, and it'll just be nice and light. You can do them by hand also. If you want to just do them all individually, you can do that. But I like doing them the little splatter, I think, makes it a little more random. Okay, so there's my finished painting. Adorable. Do you see how it finished when it comes together with the little black and white details, and of course the snow? So the last thing I do is I'm going to paint the edges black. And when you have extra paint on your palette like this, take a little bit of another color like this. In this case, I'm going to use blue, maybe even a little green. That'll mix extra black. So now I have extra black paint to go around the edges. And I go back and forth without going on the front. I just go back and forth using the side of my brush. So I know this looks complicated, but if you watch me painting it from start to finish, each step is fairly easy. I think the hardest part is probably going to be drawing your sled. And in that case, I would take a photograph or use an image that you can trace, cut out, and then transfer onto your canvas if you're doing this larger. If you're painting it smaller, I think you can wing it, like I did, because there's only a couple of straight boards and the straight frame of the red, and then you know what, everything else is kind of free form, the greenery, the bow. But when you put it all together, that's when it comes together. Each little piece is not that complicated. It's just when you get it all put together that it looks amazing. I'm even amazed. I think this looks way cuter than I thought it was going to look. But I love the snow on top of the, and that's also a very forgiving element. So when you're painting this, just hang in there until you get to the snow and the little black and white details, and you'll love your painting in the end. All right, well, if anyone paints this painting, please share it on this Facebook page, or you could share it in the free group. We have an Art Rave online painting group that's free, and you can share it on that group post. We love to see people's finished paintings. All right, well, happy holidays, everybody. Hope this brings you into the Christmas spirit, and have a great rest of your Monday and a wonderful, inspired week. Okay, goodbye, everyone.